This budget hearing conducted by the Committee on Appropriations and Adjudication now reconvenes discussions of the fiscal year 2018 executive budget request. This afternoon, we are meeting with the Guam Regional Transit Authority to discuss their budget proposal. I want to preface this budget hearing with the uncertainty the government of Guam faces with regards to potential negative impacts of general fund revenue collections and economic activity as a result of numerous factors such as the H-2B visa denials, potential federal tax reform, and cuts that may erode GovGuam's revenue base, caps on Section 30 revenues to be collected. With these issues at the top of our mind, the Guam Legislature has a daunting task of ensuring that we provide funding for the public services the people of Guam want and need. Just a brief overview. The executive budget request submitted by the Governor through the Bureau of Budget Management and Research provides a $5.9 million or a $2.3 million increase for the Guam Regional Transit Authority for FY17, authorized levels of 3.6. This is a 63% increase as compared to the FY 2017 authorized levels. I would like to thank the Guam Rapid Transit Authority officials that are present today. Inasmuch as you've already been sworn in, you may now begin your presentation. Mr. Augustine.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, Senators Muñoz, Senator Talahi, Senator Nelson, and Senator Bisco Lee. My name is Enrique Augustine, Executive Manager for the Guam Regional Transit Authority. To my right is Myra Soriano, my Administrative Officer, and to my left is Riley Filipina, my Chief Planner. Here also, sitting behind me to help me with administrative and logistics is Ms. Michelle Marquez, Planning Technician 1, an unclassified position paid by the federal government. Michelle is here as part of her professional development and training. Same goes for Ms. Jennifer Bedar. She's our customer service rep, and she's the newest in the group. Please allow me to take a few minutes to read a short statement before we discuss the budget. The Guam Regional Transit Authority has been in existence since 1980, and when it was known as Guam Mass Transit Authority. Public Law 30-05 was executed in March 2009 and made GRTA an autonomous agency. The funding source was identified to support the operation and administration of GRTA. However, the funds were utilized by several non-transportation related agencies, as you see in one of your handouts from the OPA. It is also common knowledge by lawmakers that the month-to-month bus service contract has been lingering for 12 years, and the buses utilized were privately owned. Guam's only public-owned transport entity has not raised bus fare since its inception 37 years ago. Further, Guam's only public transportation agency has not purchased any new vans or buses in over 25 years. In the early 90s, used buses were brought in, donated by Hawaii, but they only lasted for a few months. Now I want to go over some significant milestones because on the last budget hearing, we didn't have any of those. On November 23, 2016, a few months back, the long-awaited long-term bus service contract was finally awarded. It is for a 3-year contract with 2 one-year increments based on the contractor's satisfactory performance. GRTA bought 12 ADA accessible, off-the-shelf commercial vans that are ARA funded. This ARA fund came since 2009. Imagine that. We also bought 11 ADA accessible 17 passenger buses with Federal Transit Administration funds. This funds was awarded to us since 2008. The 23 new vehicles all have ramps, not lifts. Ramps are more accessible, and people with disabilities like it better. They can get on the equipment and get out quicker. Recently, GRTA renovated and relocated 13 bus shelters. These were 13 bus shelters that were not maintained over 20 years. We also bought 2 solar light sets, and we bought and installed 6 heavy cement bus benches. GRTA is also proud to announce that we thoroughly revamped our website, and it is now ADA compliant and accessible to people who are vision impaired. Just recently, we acquired 18 transit bus stop signs, and we are working with DPW to install this bus sign. We haven't had a transit bus sign since mass transit was initiated. Now, I have an issue with a matter of timing. This is on the second page. The budget for 2017 was approved before the long-term contract was awarded. The contract was awarded after the 2017 budget was approved. And the budget for 2017 allows for 11 buses as before. This is a 109% increase in equipment with a budget for only 11. Expenditures for 11 privately owned buses back in 2016 was $3,519,845, or an average per bus of $319,986. We are now using 21 of this equipment, 18 on the ready line and 3 on standby. One van last month through an MOA and a pilot program was turned over. We still own the equipment, but it was turned over to the Guam Veterans Administration. Guam Veteran Administration. This is Joe San Augustine over in Asset. And the purpose of using this van is to take veterans around to their appointment. There are veterans that are unemployed. There are veterans that are disabled. So we finally was able to help my fellow veterans, your veterans. We also are working with Dr. Sam Abini of the Department of Labor, and she will soon get one van. And this is to comply with the Workforce Development Program. In summary, our goal today is to convince the Transportation Committee that the funds we are asking is to accommodate 21 government-owned vehicles. We realize, Senators, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, that we are in a financial burden. But the budget that was given to us on a budget ceiling by BBMR will allow us to continue using the new vehicles, put in more routes, provide better public ridership on our system, and there's room to entice other people that have not used the transit buses. Over the last 16 months, we've made a significant stride in several key areas, and we need to take advantage of our successes and make our public transit system something that we can all be proud of and, more importantly, eager to support. If you would look at your folder, this is the initial set of documents. It shows mass transit automotive surcharge on the very first paragraph to include liquid fuel tax, the latest Guam Highway Funds highlights from the OPA, our copy or a few pages of our Enabling Act, the Transit Business Plan, which was approved back in 2010. Because 7 years later, we still haven't worked on it. And of course, some advertisement on the three people you see sitting in front of you. At this time, I would entertain any questions if you have it before we go through the budget, Mr. Speaker.
Your budget request includes nearly $250,000 for 4 positions: a management analyst 4, a program coordinator 2, a program coordinator 4, and a transportation supervisor. Please explain what these positions are expected to add to the operations that GRTA doesn't already do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, can you please say your question again?
You're adding 4 positions in your budget, as I understand it. $250,000 for a program coordinator 2, a program coordinator 4, a management analyst 4, and a transportation supervisor. What will these people be doing that you don't already do right now?
Okay. Those position titles were approved since last fiscal year, Speaker. And we, up to this time, the procurement process is still ongoing. And for FY18, we are just requesting for 1 additional personnel who is going to be in charge of marketing our program. Okay, the title is Marketing Specialist. That's the only additional body that we are requesting for FY18. Those 4 positions that you mentioned earlier were approved already since last fiscal year. The transportation supervisor has been announced more than a year already, and up to this time we haven't hired anyone yet because most of the applicants that applied were not qualified. So we were waiting for some applicants who are going to be qualified for the position so we can be able to hire and fill up that position.
So the $250,000 is for your marketing specialist?
That's the only one that we are requesting for this fiscal
But
year.
there's a
coming.
$250,000 increase. What is that for?
Okay, the additional $52,000 for the salaries and benefits, okay, is because of that proposed recruitment of marketing and promotion officer.
That's 52. How about the other 200,000?
As the senator's gonna
Go ahead.
go and take over. Let me explain. The Federal Transit Administration send auditors every 3 years. And one of their biggest fear is that they've been spending a lot of money in Guam, and their fear is that, do we have the right people to administer the grants? The program coordinator position was the one that was vacated by Mr. Filipino when he got promoted to chief planner. The transportation supervisor is not just any transportation supervisor. This transportation supervisor must be knowledgeable in FTA, rules and regulations, ADA. They have to be knowledgeable on equipment that is not the type of equipment that you find in Guam. These are specialized equipment that have to be ADA compliant. So when the feds were here last time, the first thing they asked me is, how are you managing your program without the people to do it with? Riley, myself, Myra, the rest of the staff, we're wearing 3 to 4 hats every day. I personally go out and inspect.
That was funded in the last budget?
That was funded.
So it wasn't an appropriation issue, it was a recruitment issue on your side?
Yes, it is a recruitment issue. My problem is that the position for transportation supervisor has been open now going on 2 years. And we even put out our own ad on the newspaper to recruit. We finally found a few people that may qualify, and they may be sent to us for an interview next week. We interviewed one person who was highly qualified several months ago, but then turned us down. He wanted to work for DPW, and I don't blame him. Then we interviewed another person, and that person didn't make the cut. So we're back to the drawing board.
But we funded it, the legislature
Yes.
funded those positions.
Yes.
Yes.
So what is the $250,000 increase for?
Now, the $52,000 on line number, I'm sorry I didn't bring this thing out. You guys have a copy of?
Yes.
Okay. Going across on item 111, salaries, and 113, benefits, that is for the marketing and promotional officer. And let me tell you why we need that person. Let's go ahead and give a handout, page 21.
I understand that why you need that person. I'm just trying to figure out where's the other $200,000 for?
No, the 200, if you go down to contractual, there is $252,000. That is a different line item. That's under contractual. Not, I don't know where you have the information of $200,000 for new position. The only position that we're asking, sir, is the one for the marketing and promotion officer. Now, the reason why we're asking for that is on our transit business plan, the one that was created by professionals and was paid through federal funds, they tell us this is the skill sets that you need to run a transit agency. Now, our capacity on the bus per month, if you took 100% capacity of the buses and the vans and you cycle those buses and vans 7 times a day, we're running 15 hours a day, 6 days a week. Our total capacity is 41,496. That's the number of passengers you could take. That is our average monthly as far as capacity. But we're underutilized. We're only using 18,408 of that capacity, or 44.3%. Now, here's the problem, and here's the challenge. We need more ridership. When I first got to GRTA, the first thing is, why don't we set up a marketing effort? Well, you know, you can't market bad service. So we have improved on the service. We've closed the afternoon gap. We provided more frequency to the southern part of the island. We added more buses to augment the gray line in Dededo. We instituted Orange Line, which everybody likes. It goes up to Social Security, VA, WIC. It goes to the Barragata Post Office. It goes over to Revenue and Taxation. We didn't have that service before. So the current ridership is basically the same people that have been using transit over many years. And there are some new entries. As a matter of fact, our average ridership have gone up by 19% since we instituted the new bus schedule. It is an interim bus schedule that have yet to be approved by the board, but since we have those equipment available, why not use it? So we need a promotion and marketing manager to help us market our effort and our buses, because those buses, we should rent those buses. The buses are meant for all of us, not just for the disabled and low income.
Okay. You said you finally finalized your contract with
Yes.
bus service.
23rd November.
How much is that per year? What's the contract cost?
The contract cost is based on the number of equipment that's used by type. We have two types of service. Paratransit, that goes and pick you up from the curbside or even to your door, takes you to where you want to go. It's a shared ride and brings you back.
So how much was budgeted for this current year?
I'm having Marion look that up right now.
Mr. Speaker, our projected cost for bus operation services by end of this fiscal year is 4,359,041.13. So that was the projection that we are looking at to spend by end of this fiscal year.
I see that. That's why your budget has gone up to 4.6.
Yes. Part of this budget, Mr. Speaker, is that we're using federal funds also.
You have some federal funds, yes, I understand that. How much are you going to be, how much is your current contract for this year?
Okay, the current contract, okay, must be, per our projection, must be around 4,300,000 something.
That's for next year.
This is for this fiscal year, so we're looking at the same more or less figure by next fiscal year if we are going to go the same level of operation as we are in right now.
How are you able to pay that when we only appropriated 3.6 last year?
We pay that through using federal funds. This year we asked the front office, the first time ever, to release the 15% reserve for operation. We also had a position for a lawyer for GRTA that has not been filled for 25 months, maybe even a little bit longer. Took part of that money for that salary. Transportation supervisor, we took the money for that. So whatever money we can move around to assist with our operation that was originally budgeted for GRTA, that's what we use. We also use continuing grant from the FDA. We get yearly continuing grant for bus service operation.
Okay. If
You
I
have
may
federal funds and you have bus fare, right?
Yes.
How much did you collect in bus fare? Or
the
have you-
average
Wait. Give me the bus fare, please, as a handout.
for the bus.
Bus fare collection, that's number 5. Handout number 5. You got it? Okay.
Yes.
The bus fare collection is on this page that's being handed out now. It shows from 2014 all the way down to 2016 to give you an idea on what the average is.
Okay, now I'm getting confused.
Now,
In this handout, you have operational costs at 3.6. I thought you said 4.6, 4.3.
For this fiscal year, our budget, local budget was 3,663,000.
Yeah.
Okay. This budget was due to the 11 buses before the new long contract was put in place, right? So what happened was, in order for us to move on up the operation up to the end of the fiscal year, we requested for the 15% reserve that was imposed by the governor and Bureau of Budget. We requested them to release it so that it can help us
So it was
go
released.
through.
Yes.
Did you get the,
Could
did you
tell
get the cash?
Could you tell them how much was
Okay,
released?
we requested from BBMR to release the amount of 453,000 from the reserve. That amount was infused into the bus operation contract so that we will be able to have funding to pay the contractor.
So you received the full
We received it.
100%
No,
of
not
what
the
we
full.
appropriated last year?
We still have a leftover.
We still have leftover of reserve 96,000. We only requested for the contractual side of the budget. We did not request for the reserve for personnel, benefits, supplies, equipment, and the other categories. We just requested for the contractual under category 230 alone.
It should be on this handout.
Yeah.
That you have. It shows GRTA annual budget appropriation on the top left.
In other words, we still have 96,593 in reserve. In the event that we will be having shortfall by end of the fiscal year, we will have to request again from BBMR their mercy to release that figure to us so we can use it for bus operation.
Mr. Speaker, the reason why we showed this particular handout is it's 2 pages. The bus collection ratio is basically what you collect on bus fare versus what you spend for the operation of that service. If you go across, we're probably the lowest in the entire nation. The lowest. But imagine, it costs transit a little bit over $40 for a paratransit rider. Come and pick you up from your house, take you to your appointment. It's $40 and what was the figure? You had the figure? That would be
I understand that the fare you're currently charging and collecting is grossly inadequate.
yes.
You said it hasn't been increased in 37 years.
Basically, my summary is this, Mr. Speaker. In Guam, for every $100 that you spend on operation, you only collect $3. That's the bottom line. Other places have a flat rate, and they're averaging 30%, $30. This is one of the reasons why we went out, and you probably already read on the paper and kept track with your staff, that we went out and had a public discussion on 3 different places of the island to look at the issue of bus fare. We're required to do that. That's not a requirement by the federal government. The federal government does not tell us provide discount rates. They don't. It's not mandated by the federal government. What they tell us is you cannot raise the bus fare for a person with disability more than twice what a person that catches the fixed route. So if somebody's paying $1 to catch the fixed route, and currently a person with disability is paying 35 cents, we can, by federal guidance, raise that rate to $2. But we're not doing that. We have not done that. We have not done anything in 37 years. We're addressing that because
Why
the fact,
is that?
What?
Why haven't we? Is it something the legislature has prohibited you to
No,
from doing?
it's something that just have not been brought up. You know, our culture center, and you know this, is that we take care of the people that need help. But it's now 37 years later, after paying 35 cents. I mean, what can you buy for 35 cents now?
Okay. I just want to make it clear to the listening audience that there is no statutory or legislative prohibition against the Guam Regional Transit Authority charging whatever fare it decides it wants to
No.
collect. So it's not our...
No, it's just something that was created many, many years ago.
Yes, and it was
we're
created as
stuck
an
with it.
autonomous agency, and you have the authority currently to raise it.
Yes.
As long as we
You've
go
not-
through the AAA process.
Yes, you comply with the AAA process, but you've not gone through that yet.
We have.
And so when are you going to be presenting it to ask for approval?
Okay. The reason why we haven't presented to the senators for approval, because we went the extra mile. We went the extra step. And here's what we did. We asked from the ridership to volunteer. It was initially 9 people. To volunteer to talk to their counterparts, to talk to people that actually ride the bus, and decide what would be a fair increase. Can I show the handout for that? The handout number 11. And 24 and 25.
Okay, I'm still trying to get to the 4.3 contract that you signed. Under what authority could you sign that? Where did you have the funds that said you certified that there were funds available? You turn on your microphone.
In 2015, we encumbered 606,000 from FY15 federal operation assistant to the budget for this year, and the FY16 federal grant came in last June 4th.
How much?
So the total was 1,600,000.
So
For
that comes to
operating
2.2.
assistant, we have 876,000. So that made up the rest of the money, the shortfall that we have before. So now with that, there'll be only 86,964 in projected lapses.
So you had 660,000, no, 66,000 from the previous year, 15.
That was in FY 2000.
Speak into the microphone.
That was in FY 2015.
Was it 66 or 660?
606,000 to be exact. 132.
Okay, and then you added the 1 point,
For operating assistant for FY17, we have 876,778 to be exact. That made up some of the.
okay, just list what you have as the $4.3 million.
While they're listening to that, Mr. Speaker, let me go back to this bus fare collection. Whenever we collect bus fare, they, according to the federal government, they become program income. Program income can be used to renovate bus shelters, to send people to training, and that's above from the 15% grant administration. We bought benches, we bought solar systems for transit. In the past, all of those were taken back to the administration and was turned into the general funds, and then were used for other purposes but transit. So we're taking control of that so that we can use it for the intended purpose. And the reason why we have not increased the bus fare, because I don't think anybody really wants to increase the bus fare. It is a difficult thing to do when you're asking a person that have a fixed income or no income to pay more than 35 cents that they've been used to. Out of this, our total population of paratransit riders went from 424 to 471, an 11% increase since we instituted or infused the new equipment. The new equipment is part and parcel of the multi-step bid that we were working on, and we finally got those equipment brought in. So we're using everything that we can within our own budget, both local and federal, to cover for our expenses.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, just to clarify or give you more picture of our bus operation services, okay? Out of the 3.6 million that was allocated to us for FY17, 2.9 was budgeted for bus operation, okay? Out of that 2.9, we already spent 2,187,990 from October to April bus operation services. Also, we spent 121,623 for fuel. Okay? Now, these two that we already expended, the leftover out of the local appropriation is only 648,000. Okay? Out of the 648,000, we are still projecting from May to September bus operation services of 1,856,000. And also projected cost for fuel of 193,376. So, in other words, we would be needing 2,049,427 more to operate from May to September 2017.
Which is my point exactly. How could you sign a contract for 4.3 when you did not have that money on hand?
We have not spent the money for 2018. That's what we're talking. We have the money for 2017 to cover that, both local and federal money.
No, I know you haven't gotten your appropriation for 18 yet, but you signed a contract for 4.3 million. How much was your contract? With,
Mr. Speaker, let me finish. Okay, I just mentioned that the leftover money from local funds is only 648,965. So that 648,000, okay, will be covered by the federal grant that we just received, which is 876,778.
So,
okay, plus the 453,000 reserve that we requested BBMR to release to us. So, most likely, the projected shortfall will be covered by the end of the fiscal year. That's how we computed it as of now, based on the current level of operation that we are ongoing at the moment. So that's how it is. Local funding plus the federal funds that we are receiving every fiscal year, and the reserve that's been released to us lately.
But the bottom line is this: if we do not get what we asked for that was allotted to us by BBMR, that we will go back to 11 buses, just like we did the last few years. We will provide the same service, the same number of hours, and same number of days. It costs, and we have some very nice discussion back in the office, it costs more to run 18 buses, of course, than 11 buses. That's why we're coming here. We came here to ask for additional money to make sure that those new equipment, $2.9 million of federal money, and only $68,000 of that is local funds. 2% over 25 years. We finally decided here's $68,000 and go and buy part of a bus. So now that we have this equipment, we're saying that to improve our service, we want to have more service, more hours, more days. We need the money, because if we don't, then we've had this discussion with my group that if not, then we will go back to, if our budget remains basically flat and the same, we will go back and operate out of those 23 pieces of equipment, we're going to use 11. And the rest would just have to sit. That is our quandary. So for us to improve the image of GRTA, we have to use this equipment. But if we're not allowed to use it because we don't have the budget, then of course we will park it somewhere until we get funds.
When we gave you 3.6, you were able to use 800,000 from the federal government to be able to certify that there were funds for a 4.3 contract.
Right.
Now you're asking for a $5.3 million
Which is to reflect now that next year
5.9.
we'll be using 21 pieces of equipment and not 11. So that is where the difference is. And
So
that
how
is
much
why
is the contract going to be for next year?
Depending on what you guys, what the senators approve. If you allow us to use all 21 of them, then that's what we need, and that's why we're asking for this increase. If because of our financial condition here in Guam, we're told that no, you have to go back to $3.6 million, then okay, we'll operate the same way we've been operating before.
Can I interject, boss? Okay. Mr. Speaker, senators, okay, this fiscal year, FY17, the Federal Transit Administration gave us an additional 583,562 for rolling stock. That means we need to buy buses again. They gave us this money to procure more buses for the operation.
Okay.
If we procure these buses, absolutely, we need more funding in order for these buses to be infused into the system, and we need more budget in order for us to pay the vendors for more routes, services that we are going to provide to the public.
So how much is next year's contract going to be?
Do we know yet? We have not, we can calculate it later on, but since we just received the federal grant, it was just awarded to us last June 6th, right?
Yeah, it's
Right.
for 583,000.
You need to turn on your microphone.
That will include 5 buses and spare parts for those buses.
Yes.
Senator, we're averaging per bus last few years with just 11 buses, we're averaging $330,327 per bus, 11 buses. If we're going to be allowed to use 21 pieces of equipment, even if we find ways to cut $30,000 cost per bus. On the next page of the handout that was originally given to you, the 3-year cost breakdown, on the second page is an example that if we find ways to cut costs by being more efficient with equipment or whatever it is, even if we cut it by $30,000 per bus and we use 21 buses, there'll still be $6,300,000. Now, I realize that you're not going to give us everything we want. You got the hospital, the schools. A lot of people are hurting. We're presenting our budget, and basically, if we're told this is what you're going to get, then we will make the necessary adjustment. That's the only money we're going to spend. We're saying that if you give us the ability to use all 21 buses, this is how much it's going to cost next year. That's the bottom line.
Okay.
So the contract with the current vendor is that as we get more equipment and as we get comparable increases in budget, then that's what we would ask you to do for us, not any more or any less. Myra just mentioned that the federal government again has granted us $500,000. That could buy 2 buses and 1 van. It doesn't have to be the same one. That's against the procurement authority. We could put more buses in Derideo and Jigo because that's where the population density is. And we could also create newer routes. Like, for example, people in Santa Rita have not been serviced. Bus goes to Agate, down to Umatec, Mauricio, nothing to Santa Rita, for example. And there's a large population in Santa Rita, more so than Umatec and Mauricio and Inarajan put together. So if we're given money, this is federal money, to buy more equipment, then the local money has to match what we're trying to do. We are not going to spend more next year than what we are allotted. We're only spending this year what we have.
Okay. There was a news story that talked about a $197,000 contract with Parsons Brinkerhoff. Can you tell me about that?
I'm glad that's brought up. The only person that is the procurement officer for any agency, and especially GRTA, is the executive manager. A few years back, long before I showed up, GRTA and DPW decided to hitch a ride on a contract between DPW and Parsons Brinkerhoff to piggyback on that contract. $197,000 was spent to come out with the bus specs. The person that was involved in that $197,000 expense for a bus spec was not a GRTA employee, was not an executive manager, it was one of the board members. Now, Federal Transit, when they came here in 2014 and then again a couple of months ago, about 2 months ago, saying this is a recurring finding. And the reason why this became a finding was that the bus spec procurement was not competitively bidded out. If we want somebody to write a bus spec, we're supposed to bid it out. But everybody at that point in time agreed that yes, we could hitch a ride on DPW because they had Parsons Brinkerhoff, who is working on the 2030 Guam transportation plan and who has also worked on the transit business plan. This is a sub-portion of that grand master plan. So when we first found out, we were talking back and forth with FTA, and they said, there's a way to get out of that. Show us where you spend money for transit and you use local funds. That was with one person at Federal Transit Administration, Region 9, San Francisco. That guy has then left FTA, and the new person came in and says, no, you can't do that. So it became a reoccurring finding. Now, the irony of this...
So what year was that?
2014.
So it's not in the 17, it wasn't in
No.
the 17 budget,
No.
and it's not in the 18
No.
budget?
No.
Okay.
But I wanted to explain this. is that we're still stuck in copying up $197,000 because the funds, the feds want it back. Okay?
What do you mean cough it up? You have to,
Since the feds said that you use $197,000 to come up with the bus specification that was not competitive, bid it out, we're not allowing for this expenditures.
so,
In other words-
so you have to pay it back,
That is
but
what,
it's not in any of you, it wasn't in your last year's budget.
No.
And it's not in this
No.
year's budget, so you have no plans on paying it back.
we have plans on paying it back, we just haven't found out what method we're gonna do it. But if push comes to shove, we just can't pay it, we just tell them we just can't pay it. I asked them, okay, why don't you just subtract that from what you're gonna give us? And basically they said that you can't pay federal money with another federal money.
Yes.
Now, the irony, Mr. Speaker, is this. The irony is this, Mr. Speaker, is $197,000 was spent to come up with the bus spec, and between Riley, myself, and our counterpart in Maui, we were able to come up with a bus spec for zero. We didn't pay one penny,
Okay, Mr. Augustine, let's focus on your 2018 budget.
okay?
First of all, you consummated a contract in November for a longer-term arrangement rather than a month-to-month.
Yes,
And that contract supposedly is going to require a funding of about $4.3 million
Correct.
yes.
for the duration of an entire fiscal year. My question then is, because you're saying if the legislature doesn't provide the funding, then we're going to have to pull back and perhaps set aside some of these vehicles.
For next year.
Now, my question is, who was the certifying officer who signed off on this contract where in fact funding has not been approved?
The funding for the local.
Mr. Augustine, I think the question is direct.
Okay.
Who was the certifying officer who signed off on this contract anticipating a certain amount of obligation on the part of the government of Guam, because that certifying officer has a particular obligation to the people of Guam, and that is ensuring that the funds are either appropriated and appropriately set aside before any obligation is made by the people of Guam, albeit through the government of Guam. So who was the certifying officer?
Okay, the certifying officer is the executive manager, Mr. Agustin. Okay, at that time,
Okay, then the contract has gone through the entire process with the Attorney General's office
Yes.
review.
Anything
and the
that's
chief
over
executive.
$500,000 goes to the Attorney General.
Understood.
Yes.
Understood. I understand the nature of the laws that are in place. Now, the chief executive, based on guidance and advice from,
the aegis
I
of
take it yourself, that the contract is viable. Now, my question is there a fluctuating cost into that contract should the legislature not be able to find the additional resources which obligates us to a $4.3 million expense?
We have the money from the federal government to cover that. We are not going to be exceeding any monies that was not made available to us by local funds.
Okay, then that being the case, then the statement that you made previously that if we don't get the funding, then we're going to have to park some of these buses and we may not be able to procure
Yeah.
and use the $500,000.
Right.
So is
For
that
next year.
statement still, yes, I'm talking about next fiscal year. So does that statement still stand?
Yes.
Why would that statement still stand when you just said that federal funding, we're talking fiscal year 18 now,
Uh-huh.
not 17. We're referring specifically to fiscal year 18. So if the contract for bus services, public transit services, could conceivably obligate this government to $4.3 million every year, and should the legislature try to find as much funding but is not able to meet your request, the statement was made that buses would have to be parked.
Yes.
Now, it comes back to why were those funds certified without the appropriate funding mechanism or approval, or is there a fluctuating clause in the contract that allows for, rather than a $4.3 million obligation on the part of the community of Guam, the government of Guam, it could fluctuate to about 3.6, which is where it's at right now.
Right.
So that's where the question comes in.
Senator, during the time that we are negotiating for the contract, okay, we know that we have local funding that will partially fund the bus operation, and we are looking forward for the federal funds that are coming in, okay? Those two funds, if mixed together, will be good enough in order for us to go through the end of the fiscal year to run the public transit. In the event that there is a shortfall, there is a provision in the contract. It says that depends on funding availability. Okay, the contract says if the funding becomes unavailable, we can reduce the operation, the number of hours and the number of buses.
Senator, if comes August and we see that we're not going to be able to use 21 buses because the fund's going to dry up, then we will pull back those numbers of buses and routes. That is part of our contract. The reason why let me just go back just a little bit history. The reason why we didn't have a contract, a long-term contract for 12 years is because of the court case. The court says you cannot have an RFP. It's only for professional service. So we went into a multi-step IFB, which means that we, GRTA, the government, dictates to the vendor what routes, what hours, how many days, and that if...
Okay, I don't want to, Mr. Augustine, I don't want to get into operational issues.
Okay.
That's where you step in as well as the board.
But this is where we would reduce the cost and not go over.
But I just don't want you to make a general statement that if this legislative body or this government does not commit to providing you the funding requests that you have, that you're going to have to park some buses.
That is
Because,
the reality.
to be honest with you, Mr. Augustine, I have a concern about having a contract where the government provides all of the buses. That's a concern I have, because if we have a contract, I would think that we outsource it, you provide the buses, these are your requirements, you provide the services to our community, these are your 3 phases. If you can meet the first phase, which is at a minimum, you will get this much pay. If you increase your ridership and the exposure to the community so that they can have access to your facility, then you receive this. But in this case, the government is partnering with the contract by providing some of the buses. So I just don't understand how a statement can be made that if we don't get the resources through this budgetary process, that we're going to park some of the buses. Because I'm sure that you can either alternate the bus usage, and work with the contractors so that in fact we maximize the services to our people within the budget allocation that's provided. So you provided already, Myra, Mr. Augustine, you already provided the assurance to me that there's flexibility within the contract provision that allows for the government of Guam and the people of Guam to not be overly obligated by virtue of the contract that has been entered into, subject to the availability of funds. So I'm good on that particular note. Now, my follow-on question, if I may, Mr. Speaker, is the Speaker brought up a very good question a little earlier during the discussion. And it is about the request for an additional $250,000 for personnel. I'm looking at the recruitment in progress positions and then the position that you're requesting. The position, I'll just highlight them. Recruitment in progress, Program Coordinator 1. The others reflect Transportation Supervisor, which you already mentioned a little earlier. The other one is a Management Analyst 4 and a Program Coordinator 4. And then your additional request is for a Marketing and Promotion Officer for the Guam Regional Mass Transit, or Transit Authority. My question is, I'm looking for a tiered personnel structure, and I just don't see it.
Okay.
You're hiring all supervisors and managers, and who are they going to supervise? Who are they going to manage?
Unfortunately, Senator, that is the job description that was used and the only job description that was available to the DOA process. I have a need for a mobility manager, but there's no such animal in the government of Guam as a mobility manager. So we have to find another one that the government of Guam have that's close to a mobility manager.
No, I understand. Mr. Augustine, I understand, but program coordinator 2, that is appropriate. Then you have program coordinator 4 at a much higher echelon, supervisor / management capabilities. Then you have a transportation supervisor, which you definitely need, but then a management analyst 4. So I'm looking at where is the backbone, with the exception of the supervisors and the managers that you're recruiting, who's going to be doing, like, for example, as a messenger, who would be routing some of the documents and some of the messages, distributing items, whatever the case may be, picking up things at GSA? Because if you're going to send a management analyst 4, then we're paying that individual too much, unless that augments his or her responsibility. But I wanted to share that concern because I'm just looking at your personnel structure, and it looks like they are all higher echelon personnel, rather than at least giving someone an opportunity to say, okay, I'm program coordinator 1, there's a program coordinator 2 position, there's a program coordinator 3, and you have promotional opportunities down the road. Right now, you're pulling in, your proposal is, even though it was approved for this fiscal year and the recruitment is in place, there are all supervisors and managerial level skilled position requirements. That's what I'm going to say. But I wanted to highlight that because we certainly need people who are given an opportunity at the lower rungs to come into the agency and then understand the system and work their way up. But perhaps there's different management styles. I just look at that as a concern, knowing full well that there's going to be questions raised about who's going to be managing who. But it comes down again to your request of $5.9 million, of which this fiscal year you've been approved a $3.6 million budget from the government of Guam, and you're requesting those additional resources to help provide for your contract requirements and help to provide for your additional personnel.
The contract requirement and the program management. We need skilled people that understand federal contracts. We need skilled people that knows how to talk to the feds when we're asking for additional money. We have not done anything that is unusual from what was included in the transit business plan. I would like to ask you to turn to page 7-4.
Mr. Augustine,
this is all in line.
Mr. Augustine, I'm only here to help provide support to the agency based on your request. How you expend those resources and you assure the community and the people of Guam that the investment of either $3.6 or $5.9 million is a good investment in our transportation agency. That's the assurance that I need. And who you hire, what positions you fill. But I'm only bringing up that issue as a concern because you're hiring all higher echelon personnel, but then where are your 2 or 3 individuals that are going to really more or less carry out
we have an answer, sir.
the daily operational concerns? But
Currently, Senator, we have a customer service representative that doing the running around at the same time, okay? And she is Jennifer Badar. She is currently sitting on that position, and she's the one doing the running around for the office. And also, it doesn't mean that we requested for those positions that were mentioned earlier, and they were all approved last fiscal year's budget. We are obligated to hire exactly the title, the same title of
no,
that
I understand.
individual.
I understand. Please know that I was in your position many years ago.
Okay.
So I understand the entire process. What
We can
I'm
downgrade
saying,
it. We can downgrade it.
No,
later
I'm
on
not.
if-
If those are your requirements, look, you're the executive. You're the administrators of the program. I'm just sharing a particular perspective and looking at this and saying, who is going to do the everyday operational work outside of the supervisory and the managerial level component? Because some of those positions are still critical to the entire agency. But if you haven't had them in the last 3-4 years, and then all of a sudden you're jumping up to 4 managerial and supervisory positions, then it brings into question who's going to carry out their daily operational requirements, such as what we discussed earlier.
I understand that, Senator. Let me answer that real quick. Federal position like the one I just mentioned, planning technician 1, Michelle Marquez, that's a federal position. We can train her to move up the ranks if we have the opening. We have another federal position, a planner 2. No, that's planner 2 that can move up.
Okay. Then let me ask you a question then, Mr. Augustine, because you're sharing 2 additional positions that are not reflected in this.
The reason why it's not reflected because those are federally funded.
No, I understand, but if you look, there's a federal component here of this
Yes.
entire budget. I think that you owe it, and all the other agencies owe it to this body so that we can understand the picture in totality.
We will
How
correct
many
that, sorry.
locally funded positions, how many federally matched funded positions with local resources, and how many federally funded positions. But that is something that I'm hoping you would share with the chairman, so that when we consider your budget, we look at the picture in totality. Because certainly the federal funds, there have been instances many times in the past where federal funds have been exhausted and it's had to be absorbed by local funds. And we need to prepare ourselves in terms of looking at the budget, whether it's this fiscal year or any subsequent fiscal years.
Understand,
But
Senator.
outside of that, please, I mean, I'm looking really at your request from 3.6 to 5.9. And I would hate to see you, Mr. Augustine, and your team set aside some buses, primarily because you don't receive resources, rather than rotating some of these vehicle assets out there in our streets to be able to accommodate and provide services to our people. I do have a question that one of the senators who had to leave the room asked me to ask you, so let me just present it. Can these buses be used for field trips or after-school activities or sports?
And the answer is no, because we are not funded for that purpose. Our mandate is to provide fixed route for people that use the transit.
I'm good with your initial explanation. I'm good. So
No,
you ready? Because it already clarifies it. And we know where most of the funding sources
Yes.
originate from. And that's federal source, so we need to be mindful of that. So thank you very much for your presentation. And please, if you can provide the chair with some of the additional information on the federally funded positions, so that at least he would have a good understanding of the total staffing pattern. Thank you very much, Myra and Mr. Augustine. And thank you very much.
Next time, we'll provide that to you, Senator. But since we are requesting for local funding, so we concentrated on the local one. But we will next time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I came in a few minutes late. I may have missed something, but I just want to clarify. We have a contract right now with a private company to provide busing services. Now, in that, initially, I think it was with 11 buses. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And now you're saying now we have 23 new buses.
Yes.
On top of the 11 that the private company provides. And let me clarify that.
No, we're not adding 23 plus 11. It's 23 total.
Oh, it's 23 total.
2 of that is being used by VA, and the other one's going to be used by Department of Labor. So that gives you 21. 18 of them will be on the ready line, and 3 would be on reserve.
Okay. And of the 11 buses that was basically initially contracted for, were those buses to be provided by the contractor or by your agency?
In the event, the contracts state that in the event that our own government-owned buses are not available, either they've been worked on because of maintenance issue or breakdown or accident, that we're allowed to use the buses. We are allowing the vendors to provide their own buses.
Okay. So bottom line, the vendor, the contractor, is using our buses right now, unless something happens
Yes.
to the bus.
Yes.
Okay. And so with the purchase of these new buses, then the contract price will go up because now there's a lot more buses to drive. and maintain. I would imagine the contract covers maintenance of those buses, or does it? Or
No.
are you responsible for
We,
it?
we are responsible for that. It is best practice by FDA, and that's what they imposed on us. They gave us $237,000 for a bus maintenance facility as an A&E, and once we find a piece of property from the government of Guam, that we would execute that $237,000 A&E, tell the feds how much it's going to cost us to build this building, and then they'll allow us to use that money. But we're not there yet.
Okay. But then in your report, you're saying that expenditure for 11 privately owned buses, and this is where I got a little confused. It says privately owned buses. What do you mean by that? It says expenditures for 11 privately owned buses in fiscal year 2016 was $3.5 million.
Privately, Senator, means it's owned by the private company. It's an all-in contract. The contract back then states that they charge us for fuel, maintenance, parts, the whole ball of wax.
Okay. So in the new contract, which is just signed a few months ago, 7-8 months ago in
No,
November,
23rd
right?
November, yes.
We are no longer utilizing those 11 privately owned buses.
We own when our equipment is down, they inject
Right.
those at the price that we negotiated with them.
Right, but right now, I mean, absent any breakdown of our buses, of our buses, they're using our buses.
Yes, and it's only going to be a total of 21 regardless.
Understood. What I'm trying to get through is that in this presentation that you make, previously in fiscal year 2016, of the 11 privately owned buses, you were saying that it costs about $320,000 to operate each bus.
Yes, for the whole year.
For the whole year. In this new contract, is that the same price since we're providing the buses?
We will, our share of this contract is we're responsible for maintenance once the warranty is out. We're responsible for the fuel. We're using the same contract that the government of Guam is using through GSA. We're using the fuel that way. Once the warranty runs out and starts to break down, we're going to be the one to buy the parts, pay for labor.
Right. So the question...
So if you add the price of our bus per hour and the remainder, that would average around $300,000.
It'd be the same thing.
Yes, because the maintenance on the older buses is higher than the maintenance in the newer buses. So that's why I alluded to the fact that if we can cut like $30,000 per bus per year, then we could make it happen.
So, but coming up now to the extra $2.3 million that you're asking for, and that primarily is to cover a contract, basically. What's THF? I mean, right after this on 230, I'm looking at this page. It has 2 point.
They use all kinds of, it used to be called the Guam Highway Fund, Territorial
okay.
Highway Fund. So that acronym is being used interchangeably.
Okay, so that's the Territorial Highway Fund.
Right.
And the PTF right under that is
Public
what?
Transit Fund.
Public Transit Fund. Okay, are they essentially the same fund? Aside from just the...
It's coming from the same.
It's the same pot, right?
It's just
So
they
it's the
call
same
it
thing.
differently. The Public Transit Fund should be exclusively, according to our Enabling Act, belong to GRTA through the liquid fuel tax and the mass transit automotive surcharge.
Right. And, well, let's just go down that road a little bit. To your understanding, where has some of these funds go other than to your agency?
You could read, there's a handout that shows the OPA's latest report.
Top of your head.
DOE, DOA, Better Business or Better Service, Government Service, Mayor's Council, UOG, GCC.
Okay. And then, but let's get back now to the budget. So the request for the additional $2.3 million is to cover the running of the extra 7 buses?
No, it's 11 and 21.
Oh, excuse me, the 11,
It's 10 more buses.
10 more buses? Okay, so that's a 2.3
Yes,
increase to be able to service
yes,
those buses, to be
Right.
able to have the contractor or the vendor drive them, and then for us to maintain it and buy the fuel.
that's right.
Okay. And then without it, what you're saying is, of course, if we give you that, then you can service all those buses, those new buses, and put them on routes. If we don't, then you'll have to downsize accordingly.
I had a bad choice of word when I say park. Yes, we're both Army officers and we understand operation. You can rotate the buses, but if all you're going to have is 11, all you're basically doing is using 11 buses,
Right.
rotating it around. You're not using all 21 of them.
Right.
And that the intent is, and the budget that we're asking for, is to use 21 of them.
Right. Go ahead, Myrna.
Also, Senator, during the time that we were utilizing 11 buses that was owned by the contractor, there were plenty of times that we are experiencing problems because those buses have reached already
They were old buses. They were old buses.
What do you call this? They reached the lifespan.
I agree. I think we all can agree upon that.
Yeah, that's why, we were so happy that we were able to get federal funds to procure our own government-owned vehicles to be used for the public transit operation.
All right. Mr. Augustine, it looks like you want to say something.
That's after 25 years of not addressing the issue of buying buses,
Right.
and the local funds paid for 2% of what we bought of those 23 buses.
Okay. Good enough. All right. And I just wanted to get down to the very bottom of it. The increase is for the expansion of the bus service because of the availability of
Yes.
new buses
That's
that
correct.
we now have that were bought with federal funds primarily.
That's correct. And that would basically address a lot of the issues before with the afternoon gap, not enough frequency to the southern end, not enough buses to the northern end, and there's no buses going to these other places that I mentioned on Orange Line.
Okay. And if all the buses are implemented, well, let me just ask the very first question, I suppose. Right now, without the new buses running on the 11 buses that we are operating right now, or are we operating more? Are we operating more buses right now?
We have 18 buses that are online and
Okay.
three buses on reserve.
Okay, so there are 18 buses running.
Yes.
And I would imagine that the way they operate would be, well, how many routes do you have? Is that including or excluding the paratransit?
The paratransit is separate
Okay,
altogether.
I don't want to talk about
Right.
paratransit at this time. I just mass transit, not the paratransit.
In the previous month to month, we have 5 buses assigned to the fixed route. Now we assign 10.
And that would be, I would imagine, for one bus to take off, and then there will be another one that follows, so that the time lag is not as great anymore. In other words, instead of waiting for an hour, they wait for 30 minutes.
Let me give you an example.
All right.
There's a complaint that it's going to take me 2 hours to go from Mauricio up to Agana and then back to Mauricio. Well, we fixed that by putting a bus dedicated to go from Agana to Agate, and then there's a shuttle that goes from Agate down to Umatic and Mauricio. So we cut the time,
Okay.
and we made more assets available.
So those routes that the buses travel on are shorter, so that they
Yes.
basically meet up with each other,
Yes.
and then they come
That
to
is
town.
exactly the,
And that's how you were able to shorten the
Yes.
time lag.
yes,
between,
that's the practice.
Okay. And has that been effective?
Yes. It became so effective that 19%, we can see on October, November, December, using the old buses prior to the award of the new buses, that there's a 19% increase in ridership.
Okay. The real challenge is for, you're saying to increase the ridership to be able to support this system is perhaps, well, one of them perhaps is probably a central place for people of various villages to be able to catch the bus. In other words, sometimes from walking from the house to the bus stop, it's not like we're in the States where the temperature might be cooler, or the distance is quite short to the end of the block and you catch the bus at the end of the block. Here, if you live inside the village, just take, for example, an Agate, and you live inside Agate, you're not going to walk from your house all the way down to Route 2 just to catch the bus.
And that's true, because on our transit business plan, it does state that if we have executed our transit business plan back in 2010, we would already have had 50 buses. 50. That would have been able to serve the inner parts of the various villages that we no longer, we have not served or are underserved.
Understood. And, you know, but we can't look back. Now we're just looking forward. Myrna, it looks like you want to say something.
Just for everybody's information, Senator's information, okay, right now we have more than 500 active paratransit riders. These 500 riders will go to dialysis, will go to chemotherapy, will go to their doctor's appointment, buy their medication, and so forth. So
Right.
if we reduce the number of buses to serve the paratransit, these people will really
Oh, I'm
hurt.
not suggesting that at
Will
all.
really hurt.
Like I said, I just want to concentrate on the mass transit at this point. Mr. Augustine?
No, just on her part, 95 of the paratransit riders are dialysis patients. Dialysis patients normally use or go through the non-emergency medical transport provided by Medicaid and public health. We, over the years, have absorbed these riders. And it is not part of our budget, but when a person shows up and they need a ride, we will provide them a ride. The difference is this: when you go and ride a commercial van to take you to your clinic, one way is $40, another $40 back. If you take paratransit, which is a shared ride, it costs you 35 cents to get to your dialysis and another 35 cents to go. That is why we see a lot of people using public transit, but we're not basically funded for this type of operation.
Well, let me just ask you, since you're going down that road, like I said, I was trying to stay on mass transit, but since you're going down paratransit area, then you're suggesting to me that Medicaid, Medicare covers that cost of the private transit for these individuals. Is that
It
yes or
covers
no?
that cost if the person applies for it, or that they go to public health and says, hey, I need help. I'm a dialysis patient. I cannot afford to get on the bus at the end of my 3 hours on the machine and share this ride to get home. I need something to take me from dialysis straight home. However, because of the affordability, 35 cents to get home, rather take that than go and apply for Medicaid at $40.
And I understand, but I guess the point that I'm trying to get to, at least the question I'm trying to get to, is that if some of these individuals who do qualify for Medicaid or Medicare to have that private transport to their dialysis or wherever they are supposed to go to, are you or your agency able to perhaps bill that way?
No, we have not gone that route. Just recently, there was a company that takes people on non-emergency medical transport that went to court because they overbilled Medicaid. We have absorbed many of those customers because now they're only paying 35 cents.
But I'm just saying that now that you're taking over that responsibility at a much lower cost, is there or have you ever thought about maybe talking with Medicaid, Medicare to perhaps be able to use the funds that are supposed to be for the private companies?
I have inquired on one email to public health to see where this non-emergency medical transport program is and who is effectively handling it and who is getting the money for it.
Right. But it seems to me that you might want to inquire a little bit more, because instead of charging 35 cents, if you could charge even under the $40 that the private company was charging,
Absolutely.
you might be able to have more funds in your paratransit operation to be able to run that.
You're absolutely right, Senator.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make
yeah.
that note since you wanted to go down paratransit. But back to the mass transit, though. In terms of the bigger plan, I mean, we can have more buses and whatnot, but they would primarily be operating on the main routes, I would
Yes,
imagine.
that's why it's called a fixed route. It stops off at a designated point.
Right.
It does not deviate.
But being in charge of the mass transit on this island, have you or your agency considered what it would take to have feeder transportations from the village, maybe even privately run, right? I mean, I'll use the example. I know it's probably a bad example, but you take somewhere like the Philippines, and only because we've all been there, and you see feeder lines, whether they're jeepneys, whether they're whatever, right, tricycles and whatnot, that feed from inside the neighborhoods into the main route, and that's where they drop the people off. And I'm not suggesting we go jeepneys or anything else, but it opens up the possibility of small entrepreneurs being able to drive a vehicle around the village to service
That's
that.
absolutely right. I've spoken to the new company, they're similar to Uber and Lyft. I just forgot the name of the company.
Okay.
Anybody remember? Stroll. In
Something
Puerto
like
Rico, they use exactly what you mentioned. It's called Publico,
Okay.
which is a privately run operation to bring you from the villages to take you to the fixed route.
Right. And so has that been a part of the consideration for mass transit to look at that?
We haven't looked at that because we have not even executed on our master plan. We need to work on our master plan. We're the last of the 3 transportation agencies in Guam that have not been given the opportunity to execute on our master plan. That master plan has been sitting for 7 years.
And it's still relevant?
It's still relevant.
And does a master plan include those feeder lines into the main line?
Yes, it says that we should, by 2015, have 50 vehicles. Imagine, we currently have 23. If I have 27 more, I could make it happen. It's a no-brainer. But you need funds.
Right, and that's why I'm suggesting that perhaps the master plan needs tweaking, because if we can privatize the feeder lines onto the main route, then you wouldn't need more buses, because and we would actually be able to generate some revenue
That's
from
absolutely
private
true,
businesses.
Senator. But if you're a fixed route rider paying $1, would you be in business to take somebody from, let's say, Santa Rita down to Agate for $1?
I'm not suggesting that.
No.
Suggesting
I'm saying is, it'd be very difficult to entice private companies to get into that.
Well, maybe so, maybe not, right? Because you figure if you have a small van that can hold, 12 to 15 people, and you drive around at a certain time to get from Santa Rita, not to Agate, but back down to Route 2, right in front of, right where you turn it up,
Yes.
then I would imagine that would take, maybe 20 minutes to do
That-
that, and then you go back and do it again.
That would be a beautiful concept.
Well, and again, it's just something, I'm just throwing it out, that maybe the master plan needs a little bit tweaking, because for this to work, for the mass transit to work and get more ridership on it, it has to be easily accessible. And without the parking facilities for people to drive to park their cars, to catch a bus, then it would be very difficult to convince, no matter how good your marketing person was, to convince the people to start taking mass transit.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. And again, I just wanted to throw those ideas out, but I just really, really wanted to understand the $2.3 million increase, and that was basically to provide the extra service from the extra buses that we now have.
That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good day, Mr. Augustine.
How you doing?
So when we, at least the new senators, when we first took office, you had a special presentation for us. Actually, it was a nice presentation. You were able to give us an insight, teach us a little bit about the Regional Transit Authority and some of the issues that you had adopted or inherited. I would actually like to meet with you again and see where we are. It's only been about maybe 5 or 6 months, but also a good idea for me to just touch bases with you, so maybe I could set up something for...
Absolutely. I will do that again, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to recommend to the board that we have a working session
Okay.
amongst the people that's involved, GRTA and the Transportation Committee, whoever can show up, because we really need to address this issue. We make tremendous strides in our facility and the number of equipment. we just need to put it together and perhaps start addressing the master plan.
That was another issue that you brought up, that you said you were a homeless agency.
Yes.
You didn't have a facility to operate out of, and I don't see that in the budget here. Is that something part of your master plan as well, too, to look for a place that...
We became homeless in 2001 when we were abolished, and our building was the one that's currently occupied by the Hagatna mayor. We've moved 4 times already. Very poor on productivity, morale, and records get lost. Part of this $1 million that Mr. Servino and Senator Rodriguez is working on is $1 million from FDA. The idea is this. Once that building is built, we have 2,000 square foot of office space to house the one called one-click transportation management system and the staff. We're still not going to own our own equipment. That $1 million, if I had access to, I would purchase my own building. FDA would be so happy. That $1 million has been around since 2012. So if Mr. Sabino is not able to execute, I was told by the state management review that was here a few months ago that, listen, other communities around the United States, no, you have this $1 million. Why haven't you spent it yet? So we need to spend it. And yes, part of the master plan, part of our transit business plan, addresses all of that.
Okay, I was just wondering where that, like a building, anywhere in this, I didn't see it, so I just wanted to ask that.
The main terminal for transit, according to the Hagatna Restoration Board, if that happened to be a fruition, is a piece of property, 3 slivers of odd-shaped property in between, let's say you form a triangle between the Hagatna swimming pool, the new Nambo building, and the Bank of Guam. It's in there in the wetland areas. I doubt if the federal government would give you money to build something on a wetland. So we are actively looking for a place to come up with a terminal. And I know the place, but it just doesn't belong to the government of Guam. But the federal government is willing to pay for that piece of property, but we have to show them that government of Guam don't have any property to give to GRTA.
Okay, thank you.
I have met with Senator Ada and Director Mike Borja back in October to discuss this very issue.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your answer, and I look forward to hearing from you. With
Thank
the,
you. And it
working
was
group.
my pleasure to brief the incoming new senators.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And you're excused.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Duenas, do I understand you wish to testify? No? Okay. Then, with nobody else wishing to testify, this budget hearing is now recessed until 2 o'clock on tomorrow when we meet with Department of Corrections.